So, the Vancouver Canucks are playing off against the Carolina Hurricanes later today. In fact, this video will be out maybe about an hour before that game actually begins. But this topic, even though you can say it steps on the toes of the main squad and the actual game to be played, this topic is so big. And I think a lot of Canucks fans are going to be having their eyes on this one, that we need to make a video about it, because today we are going over Jim Rutherford directly addressing the idea of a Vancouver Canucks rebuild, and how alarming this may seem to some folks on the outside looking in, and then some. So, big shout out over to Ian McIntyre, who went out there and posted this Jim Rutherford interview on sportsnet.ca. Spoiler alert, a rebuild is not something that we're going to look at doing. Like I said, we are in transition, but we're not trading all these players for draft picks that may or may not end up playing someday. Let's continue with the article itself, and then we'll read a few tweets. So, sportsnet.ca Q&A, Canucks Jim Rutherford on rebuilds, injuries, and the overall outlook of the team. Let's scroll down and read some of these quotes here. After all the injuries your team endured last season, we thought the law of averages were with you this year. But you've had as many as 9 players out already, and now Demko is hurt, week to week. Do you feel like you can't catch a break? Rutherford said with a compressed schedule, yeah, we expected injuries, but we didn't expect it to this extent. A lot of teams have injuries. Maybe not as many as we do, but you deal with it. The injury crisis accelerated when Chytil and Bluger went down in the same game. How big a blow was it to lose Chytil to another concussion just 6 games in? Oh, it says another concussion. Okay, well, I guess that's confirmed now. Well, when we made the trade with the Rangers, we were aware of the risk, but he was really the only center available to get back when we were trading such a good center in JT Miller. We were aware of that injury history, and we were hoping for the best, but we openly admitted that we needed to strengthen our center ice position in the offseason, and even to today, Patrick continues to try to do that. So essentially admitting that they weren't able to bolster up that center position, but then again, it was a very difficult free agent time this season. Yes, you said after last season that the Canucks needed to acquire a second-line center, and it would be expensive to make that trade, but very expensive not to do it. Do you think in April you'd still be waiting for that trade in November? No, I did not. But it's not from Patrick's lack of trying. He's calling teams all the time. If it ever gets to a conversation about potentially adding somebody, the price is just too high. How high? Like Tom Willander and young Elias Pettersson too high? Yeah, like that, Rutherford said. One of the things I've been open about is, we're kind of caught in between here right now. I believe our organization has done a good job in building up the pipeline of young players. Do we want to give those up now, or do we want to keep building? Until we traded JT, we were on the right track to continuing building towards being a contender on a more regular basis. And then when JT got traded, we were set back. Regardless of what deal we made, you're not going to replace JT Miller. And so then, we became a team in transition again. And we're still a team in transition. If you look at our lineup now, we've got sometimes 6, 7 first-year players in our lineup, and that's hard. But the positive side of that is that these guys are developing, so there's somewhat of a silver lining in a disappointing first quarter of the year. What do you do to the roster in the short term? They could make changes, pay heavy prices, and still not be a playoff team, or they could stay the course, get back healthy, and still have a chance to make the playoffs. Ay, that's the direction they want to take it. Okay, interesting. But we could also miss the playoffs doing that, right? We're in a very good draft year, and we've got to keep that in mind. Right now, as we speak, I would like to say that we would stay the course with developing our young players and getting our injured players back and continue to look for that center. We still really don't know what we've got because we haven't had the full lineup. So you're not considering trading guys like Willander and Pettersson, Lekkerimäki and Coots? Rutherford said that's not the plan. People use different words as to how a team goes forward. Some people use rebuild, some use the word transition. You can spin it whatever way you like. Retool. But the fact of the matter is, we're at a point where our amateur scouts and development staff under Patrick have done a good job in building up a good group of young players, and it would take something extreme for us to start cutting into that. Now, I'm not saying we wouldn't trade one of those players, but if we did, it would be for someone that's 25 or younger. Even our core older guys are still in their 20s. We're still a relatively young team. It's not like we're an aging team that's got nowhere to go. Quinn Hughes' future will be a subplot all season. Will his decision next summer whether to sign with the Canucks or asked to play with his brothers determine which direction the team building takes? No, I don't think so, Rutherford said. As long as we stay the course and keep getting younger players that we feel will play in the NHL and contribute to a team that can become a consistent playoff team and a contender, then that's what we would do. What a long sentence from Jim Rutherford. I honestly kind of doubt that he said that verbatim. Quinn told us before the season that he could handle the noise surrounding his situation, but he looks like sometimes he has the weight of the universe on him. How do you think he's handling this? He carries that weight on his shoulders in good times too, because he's a true pro and a true leader and he wants to succeed. He wants the team to succeed, but even more so now. From what I know, anytime I'm around him, it doesn't seem to bother him. I believe he's giving it the best he's got to help the team win. I have not seen him change in that way. Now, if you scroll down, there's a lot more here. It's a really big article, but at the bottom, this is where we dive into the quote-unquote rebuild situation. What's the best case scenario from here? The best case scenario is we get our players back, we stick with the priority we've had for 6 months to get another center, and then we see where we're at. Take a run at making the playoffs, and if you get in the playoffs, you just never know. Straight up Jim Benning level, oh, you just gotta get in and anything can happen type narrative. And if that doesn't work, then the downside is to stay the course, stick with what I just said, and we miss the playoffs. So we win the lottery, get a top 5 pick, and keep building a team that is relatively young. But the problem with this idea is, if you're trying to contend for the playoffs, it's hard to get a top 5 pick in the gosh darn draft lottery. You need to be near the bottom of the barrel to do that. And the Vancouver Canucks, I don't know if you noticed, but they technically are near the bottom of the barrel. They're one of the worst NHL teams this season in regards to the advanced analytics, and when you just look at the gosh darn standings themselves. Vancouver is 28th in the National Hockey League. Okay, fine, they're in top 5 pick territory right now, but the way Rutherford's talking about it, they still want to make the course, they still want to make the playoffs, they still want to claw their way back, and then if that doesn't work, just try to get a top 5 pick. There are mixed messages here, man. Sportsnet then says, oh, not a full rebuild? Rutherford says rebuilds can work, but you have to understand they take a long time. There has to be a lot of patience, and for the teams that take the biggest jump and ultimately rebuild, they usually have a first overall pick, and you still have to get lucky on that. I'm not naming teams, but some have tried a rebuild and had a ton of draft picks that didn't turn out. So a rebuild is not something that we're going to look at doing. Like I said, we're in transition, but we're not trading away all these players for picks that may or may not end up playing someday. Now, for what it's worth, the article does say, oh, if you wanted to do a rebuild, would the owner allow it? And Rutherford said, oh, Francesco has not been interfering. He's left all the decision-making in our hands. I've had total freedom to do what I want. I mean, you can say what you want whether or not you believe that if you're a Canucks fan. But this, combined with the idea that Rutherford said earlier on Quinn Hughes' future, will Hughes' decision change the direction or determine the direction of team building that the Canucks go down? Rutherford straight up says no, essentially meaning that the Vancouver Canucks, whether or not Quinn stays or goes, they won't commit to a rebuild under any circumstance. Let's go out there and read some tweets and dive into just how everything shapes out. Let's take a look at this over here. Thomas Drance went out there and said it's harder to sell the rebuilds don't work line in an NHL where virtually all of the recent rebuilding teams are progressing, and all the stubborn, striver-class teams are at the bottom of the standings. Buffalo is the only enduring gift to the congenitally impatient. Tash said it's time to fire Rutherford. He told IMAC they won't be doing a rebuild even if Quinn Hughes leaves. The worst fear of Canucks fans is coming true. It isn't Hughes leaving. It's trading Hughes for win-now pieces. Rutherford talking about how they wanted Pius Suter back, but there may have been miscommunication. Okay, that's an entirely other video topic. We can dive into that later. Of course, Quinn Hughes might leave anyway, but if Jim Rutherford publicly used the word rebuild as a potential path forward for the Canucks right now, you could kiss any chance of keeping one of the very best players in the league goodbye. Essentially saying here that Rutherford saying a rebuild is possible will do no favors in Quinn Hughes deciding to stay or go. He might have been interested in leaving already, but this would certainly push that down into the ground. Now, whether or not you think that's actually a priority here, that's up to you. But if you go up and read some more, Anaheim, Utah, Montreal, a whole bunch of these rebuilding teams, they didn't let Buffalo's managerial incompetence deter them from sticking to a long-term vision that involves selling anything and everything they could for high draft picks. And it worked. Look at Anaheim right now. They're fantastic. Utah, pretty strong. Montreal, hot start. They kind of fell off a little bit. Detroit's starting to get back in there. San Jose looks exciting. All of these teams that rebuilt are looking very good. In Vancouver, Jim Rutherford straight up admitting that they are not interested in going down that path to build this team, even if Quinn Hughes decides to leave. So with that in mind, let me know your thoughts in the comment section below about this interview. No face cam today because I feel like there's so much text that we needed to go out there and read that it was only appropriate to have it all on the screen here. Article will be linked in the description. We'll get into the Pius Suter stuff later, but for now, thoughts in the comment section about Jim Rutherford, the Canucks, and this Q&A. I hope you enjoyed this video. And bye.